morning. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to show you how to make your very own placemats with binding. Now, if you've followed my channel very long, you know that we went crazy with the Pioneer Woman placemats and making all kinds of bags. I think there's 9 different bags. Actually, I think there's 11 now on my channel. 11 different projects using placemats, but I kind of got really burnt out on the patterns and the lack of availability of quilted placemats. So I thought how fun it would be to make our own quilted placemats that we can use to make actually just placemats, but if you want to, you can make your own projects using your own fabrics and give us a lot more versatility in making the placemat projects. So again, these can be used as placemats or they can be used as the casserole cozies, anything like that. You can make them in any size you want. I'm going to make them in the same size as the bags were for these projects, but you can adjust those measurements any way you want. You could make them square, you could make them rectangle, you can make them small, you can make them large, whatever you want to do. So come along and join me in making your own quilted placemat with binding. Don't let this binding scare you. I'm going to show you a really easy way to make the binding. It's not difficult at all. I know it can seem daunting, but it's really pretty simple. And the way I'm going to show you, easy peasy. Anybody can do it. It's a beginner sewing friendly project. And again, make a placemat, make a bag, make this style bag, and you don't have to use the Pioneer Woman patterns. You can make your own. How cute did this one turn out? All right, let's get started. All right, to start off, we're going to need 3 pieces of fabric. I'm using 3 fat quarters. You can get away with whatever type of fabric you want to use. It does not have to be a fat quarter, and especially for the binding, I'm only using a little bit of a fat quarter. But to start off, you're going to need your front piece of your placemat, the part that is going to be the main show. That's going to be cut to 15 by 20. The back of the placemat is going to be cut to 18 by 22. And your batting is going to be cut to 18 by 22. This is all in inches. You can use whatever batting you want. I'm using this Warm and Natural. I would suggest not a real thin one because you want the placemat to have some body, especially if you're going to be doing other projects with it. For your binding, I cut mine to 2.5 inches, and you're going to want 75 to 80 inches of binding. So I just cut 4 strips, 4 20-inch strips off of a fat quarter. So I've got enough to go around all 4 sides with a little bit of extra. The first thing we're going to do is prepare our binding just to get that out of the way. All right, so now that you have your binding, you don't need to cut this on the bias because we're just doing straight edges on the placemat. So you just need 2-inch strips. Now you have 2 choices. If you want, you can just put right sides together, just like this, stitch a 1/4 inch down the 2 edges, and that will secure it. That's perfectly acceptable. It's totally fine. The only problem with this method, and again, I've done it, but the only problem with this method is it leaves a little bit more bulk in your seam. So the correct way to make binding is to attach it on the diagonal like this. So I've already started doing this one, so let me show you how that is done. So what you're going to do is take one end of your binding, your 2-inch strip, and you're going to cross it with another strip, just like this. And then, it doesn't have to be right to the edge. You're going to take a ruler and you're going to go from that inside to the outside corner. If you want, you can mark it with a fabric marker. Totally up to you. You don't have to do this, but I'm doing it for demonstration purposes. So then you're going to take it to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch right on top of that line. Now, if you're not sure, if you get confused which angle, just kind of eyeball it. Put your finger here as if this were stitched and see if when you open it up, if that's going to make a continuous binding. You can see that is. So I'm just going to straighten those back up. I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine. I'm going to stitch right on that line. All right, I've stitched that down. So now let's double check, make sure it's correct. it is. So now what you want to do is just open that back up, and you're going to go 1/4 inch outside of, excuse me, 1/4 inch outside of that line, and just trim off that excess. Just like that. It's going to leave these little dog ears. You can snip that off. All right, and then when you open it up, just like that. So we'll do it one more time. I'm going to put one down, put this one. We're putting pretty sides together. Let's cross them. Choose our ruler and our pen. And it's just helpful to mark it as you're just getting started. Once you do this a few times, you won't need to even draw it. You'll just take it over to the machine and stitch it. You can also pin it if you need to. All right, so we've got that. Make sure it's right. It is. And we're just going to trim that off about 1/4 inch. Get rid of our dog tails, or dog ears, they call them. All right, now once you have that part done, you're going to go to your ironing surface. Hopefully you can see that over here. Let me pull this over. Go to your ironing surface, and you just want to open this up. Press your seams open. So you can see my seams are pressed open. And now we're just going to fold this in half. Wrong sides together. Let's press it all the way down. All right, so we've got our binding all done. We can set that aside. So now we're going to take our backing fabric and our batting and lay those together, and they should be similar in size. They don't have to be exact, but pretty similar in size. And I'm going to spray it with a little 505. You don't have to do this. I just think it makes it easier. And I'm putting the wrong side to the batting. Just like that. All right, and now we're going to turn it over. We're going to take our front fabric and center that. And again, it doesn't have to be exact, just basically center. We just have extra here for quilting and for any shifting. And I'm going to use my 505 spray again. If you want, you can just pin this together and just wing it. That's up to you. All right. So now you have to decide how you want your quilting to be. Do you just want straight lines going this direction? Do you want straight lines going this direction? Do you want diagonal lines? Whatever you want is perfectly fine. Make it yours. Do it the way you want. Okay, so now you need to decide how you want your quilting to be. It's totally up to you. You can do straight lines like I did on this one, which is just absolutely straight, nothing fancy. To make the lines go this way on a finished placemat, you want to make them go this direction. But you can do diagonal lines, whatever you want. I showed you in the last video how to mark for diagonal lines, but you can just use your ruler, use a fabric marking device. This is just a chalk marker. I'll link it in the description below. Make a line, use that line as your guideline. I'll put the 1-inch line on there. Make another one. So you could do that, or you can use the marker on your walking foot. It's totally up to you. I'm going to use a walking foot and do it that way, so I'll show you how to do that. If you want to do a diagonal line, there's a diagonal line on your quilter's ruler. You just set that right here on, put the diagonal line on the straight edge of your fabric. Again, you're going to make a mark. And now I'm going to use that mark and put my 1-inch line right on that mark and continue marking. So that's how you would sew diagonals. You would sew right on that line. I'll show you how to do it with the walking foot. Okay, so when you're using a walking foot, this is my Bernina, it has a built-in walking foot. You have this little arm right here. This is what I'm going to use to measure. But before I get started, I went ahead and drew one line on my fabric to give me a guideline as to where to get started. So to get started, I'm just going to go ahead and stitch right on that line. I'm using a 3.5-inch stitch length. You can use what you want. And we're just going to stitch right on that line. Because I put that 505 adhesive spray, I might need to, from time to time, kind of lift it up and release it from the fabric, but it still helps to keep that fabric and everything from shifting. I just find that every once in a while I need to lift it up from the batting. So if you find that you need to do that, don't worry about it. Just release it. It's a temporary adhesive. That's the beauty of it. It does really help to keep that back nice and flat for you. So I do recommend using it. It just helps. And I'm just stitching just off far enough to get to the batting. Now, what I need to do is decide how far away I want my lines to be. So I want it to be fairly close. So I'm going to push this down to about right there. I'm going to tighten this little screw back here. And your most walking foot have this little guide if you want to do it this way. So now what I'm going to do is place that line that I just stitched right where that guide is, and then I know all my lines are going to be the same. So from here I'm just going to keep stitching using this as my guideline and work my way that way, and then I'm going to turn it over and work my way that way. And I'm watching this, not this. As you're going along, you want to periodically check the back, make sure that everything is staying smooth. Here's a close-up version of the guide and how I'm stitching this. Now I'm trying to do this one-handed, so forgive the shakiness of the camera, but I wanted you to see how you use the guide. Here I'm going off because I'm trying to watch the camera and the sewing machine, but you put that guide right on your stitch line and just keep stitching. Okay, so when you're all done, it's going to look something like this. Just take a look at it, make sure you don't have any buckles. I actually have one right there, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's not going to show once this is washed. So what we need to do now is cut this down to 14 by 19. So what I'm going to do is go to my first edge, and I'm going to use my stitch line as a straight line. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch mark on it, make sure it's 1/4 inch all the way down. And you can see my fabric has shifted a little bit. That's why we made everything a little bit bigger than we needed. So I am going to make my first cut, and again, I'm using my stitch line as my straight line. I put that right on the 1/4 inch mark. All right, so now I've got a straight edge. Now I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to use this straight edge as my bottom. And I'm going to see how far I can go and get a straight edge up here and still catch all the fabric. And it doesn't have to be exactly 14 by 19. That's just what I used based off the Pioneer Woman placemats. But on the demonstration one that I used, I actually made it a little bit smaller. Again, keeping this straight. All right, so let's see where we're at. 19 is about right here, so it's going to be about the middle of this section. So again, I'm going to use my ruler, the straight edge that I've got down here. I'm going to line the two straight edges up on my mat that I've already cut. And I'm going to use the lines on my ruler, and I am going to go ahead and cut this off. On one more side. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Again, use the straight edge with the straight edge of my ruler. And there is our placemat. All right, so now it's time to add the binding. The first thing we're going to do is start our binding on a side. I like to start on the short side. We're going to add the binding all the way up to the edge. We're going to put raw sides together. And we're going to clip it into place. All right, so we've got raw edge to raw edge. We've got it lined up. We've got a bunch of extra up here. We're going to start sewing about where this first clip is, somewhere right in here, somewhere on about the middle of the side. And we're going to stitch down to about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. So the edge of my placemat is right there, 1/4 inch. It's going to be about right there. So we're going to sew to there, and then we're going to stop. We're going to use just a little bit more than 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can use right at 1/4 if you want. And again, you're going to stitch from about the middle. It doesn't have to be exact, just somewhere around the middle, down to about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and then come back and I'll show you what to do. Okay, so I stitched down to about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge, and I stopped. This is open, started stitching here. So what you're going to do is take your binding, and it's easy if you use a mat underneath of you. You're going to turn it so that the binding goes off the edge, lined up with the bottom, just like that. So it's just like that. It's at a right angle. This line from the bottom continues down to the raw edge of the binding. I like to put a pin, or I'm using an awl right there. And then you're going to flip the binding back this way, so that this side is straight as well. Just like that. You can clip it if you want. And usually I do this right over at the sewing machine, but I wanted to do it here so that you can see really well. Now you're going to take it back over to the sewing machine. You're going to sew with right from the edge, the same exact seam allowance that you used over here. So just a little bit over 1/4 is what I'm using. And you're going to stitch all the way down here. And you're going to stop 1/4 inch from the edge. It's going to be about right there. If you want to pin this, you can. You don't have to. So you're going to stitch from here all the way down, stopping at a 1/4 inch, and then we're going to do the exact same thing. All right, so here we are. We're going to turn it again. We're going to line this up on a line. That's straight. I'm going to put this straight. So it's a perfect right angle. Just going to hold it right there. Flip it this way. So down to about a 1/4 inch, stop, and we'll do the turn again. Okay, so I went ahead and did that corner, so now we're up here. So again, we're gonna flip this way, flip it back, and then you're going to take it over to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch just a couple of inches down, about, let's say, 2.5 inches. So I'm only gonna stitch from here to about right there, and then we're going to stop. So this is where the two ends begin and end. All right, so I'm going to go about halfway in the middle here, from here to here, about halfway, and I'm just going to cut a straight line. Now you can attach these on the bias, but I am not going to do that. All right, so now we're going to take this one and lay it over the top, and where they meet, we're going to go past that by 1/2 inch. So here's where this one ends. So let's put it, I'll put it on the 1 inch mark. So this one ends right there. I'm going to overlap this one, and where the two meet, I'm going to go over 1/2 inch. Right there. That's my 1/2 inch mark. All right, so we're overlapping them by 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to cut this in half, right on that 1/2 inch mark. So we're overlapped by 1/2 inch. So now what you're going to do is open this one up, open this one up, and you have to kind of bunch this together. And we're going to put these back to back, right sides to right side. And then it helps to pin it or clip it, whatever works for you. I don't have any pins over here, so I'll just clip it, but we gotta get these, you wanna get the straight ends even. All right, and then you're gonna take this over to the sewing machine. You're probably gonna have to like bunch this up a little bit. You're gonna take that over to the sewing machine and you're just gonna sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance closed. All right, so you see what I did? I just sewed that closed. So now we can check it. That looks great. So I am going to just finger press this seam open. Just like that. And then fold it back in half. And then we can take this over to the sewing machine and finish closing that up. Okay, so we've got this all done this far. What we're gonna do now is take our iron and kind of just push the seam out. Don't stretch it, just push it, kind of just give it a light press all the way around. So it's just gonna help everything fold a little bit better. We are going to use some Elmer's school glue. You could also use a glue stick. We're going to turn this over and you're going to go flip the corner in just like that. If you have any of these threads, you can either tuck them in or trim them off. All right, so we're going to turn this over. And what the objective here is to fold this under evenly all the way around, or fold it over. So you don't want to stretch it. So we're gonna kind of just get it going where we want it. When you get to the edges, you're just gonna leave those straight, just like that. And you're not folding this part over. Should be a very easy fold. You want to keep it even as possible. And then you're just going to take a little bit of Elmer's glue right along the very edge, just the littlest bit. And this is safe for your machine, so don't worry about that. Again, you're trying to keep that the same margin all the way around. Give it a press. It'll set the glue. And not everybody does this glue method. I just think it's very easy when you're learning. All right, now we're going to turn it over. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to flip this over. And this is how you get that mitered corner. You've got that nice and straight. You're going to flip this down. I got a thread there I want to get rid of. You're going to flip this down. Just like that. You see, you'll get that really nice mitered corner. We're trying to keep that same margin all the way around. And to press it so that it knows where we want it to go. Just like that. Again, I'm going to add a little bit of glue, and I'm adding the glue up towards the top. We're going to be stitching towards the bottom, so that just keeps the glue out of your needle. Again, try to get that corner nice and even. I'll put a clip there. Hold the corner. Press this down. All right, got two sides done. Same thing over here. I'll roll this, get rid of my threads. Pull this corner over, make it nice and mitered. Give it a press. Oh, if you want to add a tag, this is where I would add it. You just stick it right under there. So we've got that all pinned and ready to go. Now what you're going to do is take this over to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch right where these two fabrics come together. That's called stitch in the ditch. You're going to stitch right along that seam. It helps to use a thread color that kind of matches your fabric, your binding. But you want to stitch right in that seam all the way around, and as you're doing that, it's going to catch this fabric because we've got it all nice and pressed and into place. We can tell that it's a little bit deeper on this side than it is on that side, so it'll be sure and catch it. So go ahead and take it to the sewing machine and stitch in the ditch all the way around. And that's it. You've created an original placemat that you can use to make the placemat bags. You can use it as a placemat. You can use this as a casserole koozie. Whatever you want to use it for, it is yours. It's an original, one of a kind. They're really fun to give as gifts, and just wrap them up like this, tie a ribbon around them, and super cute to gift to a friend. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think these are a lot of fun. I can't wait to see some of the original placemats that you make. I will link the placemat playlist in the description below that has all 11 different placemat projects. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to click that bell so that you're notified every time there's a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, never stop making. See ya. Bye-bye.